Hey, welcome everyone. Wow, you hit webinar go and it's like the internet opens and here we are. And there's a whole bunch of people joining us. So to give you a quick introduction, I am Dan Rome and I'm joined by.
I'm Dushka Zapata. Hello, everyone.
And we are doing a special interview, part of the Napkin Academy. And it's very special today because normally when I do Napkin Academy videos, there's a guest on, as we have Dushka today. But normally what happens is I talk to that person about them and some topic that is of relevance to all of us who love the idea of clear communications and solving problems with pictures. And this time we're going to flip it around. Dushka, what are we going to do this time?
Yeah, so I asked you for an opportunity to talk about you. The short of it is that I admire you for many, many different reasons, but one of them is the fact that you have created a life where you do what you love. And I realize I do want to say, for the benefit of everyone, that it's not like perfect and it's not free of stress and it doesn't come without any issues. It's not that. It's that the work that you do is work that brings you joy and that you love doing, and that is very connected to what you've always done. And I admire that because I think that you worked very hard and went through a lot of ups and downs to get to that point. And I think many of us, I know that's true for me, have gone through quite a journey to figure that out. And I look back on my life and there's so many things I wish I would have gotten to faster. Like I wish someone would have told me. So I want to talk about that with you. I want people to hear this conversation and go away with specific actions that they can take to have a life where the work that they're doing is more connected to what they love. And so in view of that, I want to talk about two things, and I'm just briefly looking at my notes. The first is I want to know how you figured out that you wanted to make a living at doing what you love and what that is. So I'm going to ask you to show me a lot of the work that you do because I've seen it, but maybe people who are watching this and listening to us haven't seen it. So I'm going to ask you to show some things so that people have the context that I have. And then the second thing that I want to talk about is how we do things when we're kids and that somehow we feel like we have to put them away. Like we buckle to the pressure of like, oh, those are children things, put them away. And that really a lot of the answers to how to do what you love is in the things that we do as kids. And I feel like at one point you figured it out, even though you're also in this place where you sometimes struggle, like, is this okay that I'm doing this? Is this like childlike? Is this like worthy of an adult? And I want to talk about that too. So those are the two things. The first, how did you figure this out? And the second, how does it connect when you do this as a kid? So I'd like to split this interview into three parts. The first one is your painting, which obviously folds into your drawing. And I'll be asking you specific questions. I'll walk you through it, but I just want to give people an overview of like where my thinking is. The second is I want to talk about your models. You make airplane models, and it's something that you've been doing since you were a kid. And I think that what you've done with it is nothing short of incredible. And I want people to see it, but I also want to talk about it. I think it's so essential to connect with who we were as kids. And then the third is I want to talk about Napkin Academy, because I think that, which is what we're talking in Napkin Academy, but also I think that you are doing a lot to make tools that you found useful, easily accessible to others. And I think it's our job to figure things out and share what we figured out with other people, so maybe other people can have an easier go at figuring it out. Yeah. So that's what we have. And my hope is that we can have this conversation in a short, 30, 40 minutes. And then maybe in the chat, people can put in questions. Can you begin by showing us a couple of your paintings so that I can start by asking you some questions about that? Because you draw for a living, but you're really a painter, like a painter drawer. So I would love for you to show us your paintings.
I will show them. Dushka, thank you for that. I took notes as you were making the introduction. I'm going to show the paintings. I would like your permission to take maybe 1 minute before I do, just to respond to the broader context. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Would you rather
Please.
dive? Okay. So this is a fascinating thing. I'm so glad you asked me to do this because I think about it all the time. And I know because of conversations with you that you get to do work that you love, and I get to do work that I love. And I know many people who do, and I know many people who don't. And I've got to say that those of us who have somehow found a way to make money doing what we love have got to be the luckiest people on the planet. So that to me is like is why I'm so happy you asked me to do this. And in preparation, knowing that you were going to be interviewing me, I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of attention on me, which is great. But I did want to just throw out some words from other people first, if that's okay, that I was thinking of. And I prepared the whiteboard in anticipation, not knowing where you were going to go. Yes, Dushka.
I'm sorry, you said something that I want to interrupt because it's that important, even though I would love to hear what you have planned. And that is, we are very lucky, Dan, but I think doing what you love is a skill. And what I mean by that is that you can actually figure it out. And if we say that we're lucky, that leaves people who feel unlucky nowhere. And the truth is that this is something people can pick up. And I think it's taken us many years to get to a point where we can do what we love.
Exactly.
But I do think it's something that you can pick up. And that's what this show is about. Basically, if I could call it anything based on what we've talked about so far, it would be, this is not luck. You can do this. And that's what I want to talk about.
Beautiful.
Back to you.
So I wanted to just share three thoughts that I think about to put some context around this. And you're right, Dushka. Luck is how I introduced it. And then we've got an entire whiteboard, an entire 30 minutes to talk about why it ain't actually luck at all. Mm-hmm. And just one thing is, I wanted to quote our dear Napkin Academy friend, Austin Kleon, who wrote a magnificent book called Steal Like an Artist. And I always steal from Austin, and Austin has been on our interviews many times. He says, look, all advice is autobiographical. So Dushka, everything I'm going to share with you today is just the stuff that I learned. And it's going to come across in the form of advice. It may or may not work for anybody else, but it seems like in hindsight, this is what has worked for me. And I'm going to be curious to see if you feel something similar. The second one is, I just looked it up because I knew this quote was out there, and it's from good old Mark Twain, who I'm not really that frequently quoting, but he said, we've all heard this, love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life. So that seems like good context. And then I thought, well, let's look at Oprah. And I found a quote from Oprah as well. And she said, I'm financially successful because my focus has never been money. And I thought, in this notion of luck that we're talking about, maybe there's something there. How do we do what we love and make money doing it? But now you asked about paintings. So in the things that I do for love, I'm going to actually share my screen. And I'm going to share with you some paintings.
Actually looks fantastic. Look at those paintings.
So this is a photo of the room that I'm sitting right now. So this is both my workspace and my paint studio. And you'd ask for some paintings. So I'm going to just throw some up on the screen. This is a painting that I did, just 2 years ago. And Dushka, there's actually a lovely story behind this painting. Do you want to share it?
I will try to share it without crying.
Okay.
But you and I were working together for the first time, and we were just talking to each other about ourselves, like sort of getting to know each other. And I told you that this room was the room of my life. I grew up in this room. It was my father's library. And just looking at it reminds me, I can't really think of him without thinking of him in this room. And I showed you the photo, and you asked me if I could send it to you, and I did. And then you gave me this painting for Christmas. And I cannot believe this painting. I can't believe the light on the floor and just how much more character the photo has, that the painting has, than the photo.
Yeah.
You are so incredibly talented. This painting takes my breath away. And the view outside, so that window has a view into a patio, and it has a fountain, and you can't really tell in the photo, so it was hard for you to know what to paint. But what you did paint is so accurate of what was outside of that library, that this painting, it feels like you took the painting right out of my memories. I love this painting.
Well, it was joyful to do it. Dushka, you just said something that I want to play back on. You said, Dan, you've got so much talent. I want to talk about that, because in the same way that this notion of luck might set some people off from saying, well, I can't do the work that I love because I'm unlucky, I also want to disabuse us of this idea that I can't do the work I love because I'm not talented. So I want to talk about that. Talent is what we might call it something that you're born with, an ability to be competent or spectacular, perhaps at some very specific act. But that talent is also something that you can build. And I want to talk about that too, because I think it's really critical to this idea that you can do what you love. So there's more there. So talent is a really interesting word. So this is one painting. I want to show another one. This is a painting of San Francisco, and you can see what I like to do. And it's because I like to look at things, which is also going to become really, really important as we talk about how to do what you love. I have come over my life to realize that I just love looking at things, and I love colors and I love shapes. And so sometimes I'll walk around this beautiful city of San Francisco or any place that I'm visiting and just take photographs. And usually the photo will be something that's like, this would make a great painting. There's something in the composition of this view that in my mind, whether it's the verticals or the horizontals or the depth of field or the color or the action, just seems to me like it will make a lovely painting. So I took a photo, you see it there on the left. And then you'll see I've changed it a lot, because what I often think in the act of painting is you're not trying to paint what the image looks like. The way I think about it, Dushka, is what you're trying to paint is what the image wants to look like. For me, it's not painting the color that's there. It's painting the color that wants to be there.
And I have a very quick story about this painting too, because I think it's relevant. You and I went to the street, and I recognized this street from the painting. You had painted this, and we went to the street, and I was like, this is the street of the painting. And I crossed the street, and you took a picture of me, and you were like, I think I need to replace the image of a person I don't know, like a stranger crossing the street, with you. And I just couldn't imagine that could be done, because the painting was finished, and you added me to the painting. And it became a memory that you and I shared, with you and I going to the street and me actually really truly being in the photograph and crossing the street. And when you took the photo of me in it, the scene looked different. The cable cars weren't there. The taxi wasn't there. So you managed to basically take a painting that was done and take an image out of someone who basically essentially was an anonymous person in the painting, and replace it with me. And you did that because I told you I wanted this painting for my house, and I bought it from you. And it's now in my house, and I just can't believe that I have this. I just think it's better than any photograph. I adore this painting. It's currently the original is in my house, and I love it. And I'm so amused by the fact that you easily altered the painting in any way that you wanted. And I know that probably painters everywhere know that that's not hard. You were like, of course I can do that. I made it. Yeah. But I'm just astounded at the fact that you can alter a scene in that way.
Well, Dushka, thank you. And also, it's an interesting conversation that applies to all the work that we do, is that the people who do work, whether it's musicians or whether it's writers or painters or theater performers or business leaders, people who write PowerPoints for a living, whatever it might be, if it's even sort of within the realm of creative work, which I think most of the work all of us do probably is creative, we want to get rid of the idea of our work being really, really precious. To me, this is very important. The work is just a representation. The final piece is just a representation of what you did and what you do. And this is important too, to finding what you love and be willing to go in and change it. Just because it's done doesn't mean that it's done. And it's kind of fun in the case of paintings to go back later and say, well, the world changes. I could go and change it again. I'm going to show just one more. This is a painting that I did very recently. And interestingly enough, you can see the photo again over on the left. This is a painting of one of my daughters. This is my older daughter, Sophie, and I took this painting. She and I were walking around. For anybody who knows San Francisco or has been out here, there's an incredibly beautiful park called Dolores Park. It's located right at the original Spanish mission in San Francisco. And that's the mission building that's there in the middle, in Mission School. And to me, when I was walking with my daughter, who has just graduated from college and is moving on into the next stage of her life, I saw this image of her looking out over this city as kind of representative of what it feels like when your life is in front of you. And now, Dushka, I'm gonna cry. This is the power of the evocative power of paintings. Is what does it look like when you're just moving out into the world, which I think is super, super relevant to where we are right now. Because one of the things I want to share is that, Dushka, you and I and many people who do what we love, it's taken a lifetime to get here. It's not necessarily something that happens immediately. And I'd love to shift. Those are all the paintings I wanted to show. There's some more things.
Thank you, Dan.
But
I love them.
How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic. Thank you for showing them. I think that this is going to give people context, aside from the fact that to me, at least, it's just eye candy. It's stunning. So I have a few questions, sort of in an attempt to get into the subject of how you do what you love. Can you tell us how old you were when you realized that you were a painter? That's my first question. I have many, but I don't want to roll them into, I tend to shoot many questions at once, and then it becomes really hard to answer them. So let's start there.
Okay, I'm going to show you another photo by way of answering. I didn't know you were going to ask that one, but I happen to have a photo set up that's related. Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I'm going to share the same image, and I'm just going to show a series of photographs. Can you see these 4 photos?
Yes, that's you as a 3-year-old.
So there's the answer to your question. When did I know that I was a painter? Well, I guess at age 3. So that's me drawing. I always have drawn, and we spend time around kids. Probably many of us have had a chance to spend some time around little children. And my gosh, at age 2 and on, if you put a crayon or a pen in the hand of a kid, they're going to draw. That's what they're going to do. I just never stopped. There's more that I could talk about in this set of photos, but you'd asked me about when I began painting.
Yes.
I've always drawn, and it was a big step to go from a crayon to the kind of the terror of saying, oh, now I'm a painter, because that requires more equipment, and it requires a sense that you know what you're doing. And so I made that transition from just drawing stuff step by tiny, tiny step. Dushka, it's something you say all the time. The crayons started to get more sophisticated. The colors started to get more sophisticated. Happily, my mother and my father, who really supported the fact that I drew a lot, started to get me better materials. Nothing super fancy, but better paper or bigger sheets of paper. And over time, I just continued to put the work in on those sheets of paper, and they got bigger. And then I started to buy paints and say, ooh, paints are really, really complicated. They're really messy. They're really difficult to know how to do. Crayons are much easier. But if you stay with it a little bit, you figure the paints out. And over time, your ability continues to grow. Does that help?
It helps a lot. And when did you realize, and again, I'm trying to get us closer to the actual nuts and bolts of how, but when did you realize, I know that you don't like this word and that it makes you uncomfortable, but stay with me here. When did you realize that you were really talented?
Oh, yeah. When I would get incredible feedback from what I did. I knew two things happened. One is I got into flow. I didn't know at age 5 or 10 or 15 what flow even was. Now we know flow being that state in which the work that you're doing so perfectly aligns with whatever your ability is that it flows right down that line of not too easy and not too hard. And when you're in that place, there's been a lot of science done around it and measurements in functional MRIs and things like that. When a person is in flow, when the work that you're doing perfectly aligns with your ability and pushing your ability, you go
time.
So deeply into your mind, you lose contact in many ways with the outside world. You don't want to eat. You don't want to talk, unless talking is where you go into flow. You forget yourself, and there's no sense of time. And your mind is now in truly the happy place. And I knew, Dushka, that I had talent when I would be in flow during doing the work. I would look at the work and I would say, wow, who did that? Because it's really good. And then this is really important. My parents would say, you did that. And that's really good. And then they'd go buy me more crayons. And it gets into this loop.
I want to say one thing I want to say this impassioned because it's how I feel, which is if anyone here has ever felt that, never let it go. Never let it go. It doesn't matter what other people say. It doesn't matter. Like, Dan, this is luck because you had parents that were like, yeah, more paintings. And other people are like, you'll never make your living as a painter. Like, don't listen to anyone. That flow is so beautiful. Never let it go.
Yeah.
We need to figure out how to keep you there as long as possible. And by we, I mean you, because no one can do it for you. Okay. So Dan, at one point you realized that you could use this skill for a wider array of things, and that if one thing wasn't paying you, other things could, without disconnecting you from this. So tell me about that. This is the big question. This is
the big question.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Dushka, you can't see it, but there's a lot of questions coming in on the chat channel. And one is from Graham, who asked, Dan, do you have intuition or are you self-taught? And here is the answer to exactly what you're talking about. I knew because of experience, my own feeling of flow and positive feedback, that I had an ability to paint. I technically, Graham, to answer your question, I did study painting in school, in university, and that's where I learned a little bit more about the technical capabilities of how do you use paint, how do you create a composition which is visually pleasing. And there's a lot there that can be learned. And that built upon an innate ability or a learned ability that I already had, because it put me in flow doing the drawing. And I believe everybody has something that we do that puts us into flow. It doesn't have to be quote unquote artistic. It could be playing football. It could be driving a car. It could be swimming. It could be singing. Every one of us has a place where we go.
Well, Dan, I just to put a finer point on this, because this is a little bit detailed, but it's also the answer to what we are trying to get at in this interview, which is you went to college and your intention was to be a doctor. And then you went to a painting class and you were like, holy crap, I want to do that. And then switch. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So, and this will, I hope, loop together the last couple of questions. I didn't think I could make a living being a painter from the time I was probably in high school. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to make a living being a painter or someone who drew, because I was very worried that if I chose that as my career path and it became the only source of my money, two things would happen. One, I would eventually come to hate my work. This proved not to be the case, but this is what I was worried about at age 15, 16, 17. If I choose to do that in my life, I will come to hate the thing that I love because it'll be my only source of money. And the second one is, I don't think I can make enough money doing art, because I looked around me and I realized at that time, before we had the creator economy and things like that, how few people, I had never met in my life someone who earned a living doing painting. I knew of people, I knew of Picasso, I knew of Monet, I knew of Manet. Sure, I knew that there were people out there in the world who through some circumstance had managed to make money painting, but I'd never met one of them. It didn't seem to me to be a realistic path. So
to just very quickly to recap, it's not that you have to make a living doing the thing that has you in flow. It's that you take the thing that puts you in flow and widen it so that you have more possibilities. So tell me about that, because that is, in other words, don't burden what you love with forcing it to make you money, because that's not where we're going with this. The fact is that what you love can be wider than you think it can be. So tell me about that.
So when I went to university, not thinking that I'd be able to make a living doing art, I decided to become to study medicine and become a doctor. And taking all of my chemistry classes and organic chemistry classes were great. But I also realized it was enjoyable, but I needed an outlet. So I started taking painting classes in college and realized that was where my flow was. So then I said, how can I, and Dushka, this is exactly, I hope, the point you want to make. The painting itself is interesting, but it's very hard to earn a living doing painting. But what are the things about painting that I love to do that I can earn money doing? And it was the drawing and the type of thinking that goes into painting. How do I, same as we did in that photograph of San Francisco a moment ago, how can I look at a complicated image and, using my skills and abilities and love, take it apart and replay it in a way that makes sense to other people? And that's when I thought, wait a minute, what would happen if we take all of these lessons that we're learning in painting school and applied them to business. I didn't even really know what business was, but it turns out that I also had an ability to talk to people who were more money oriented than I was, who understood business better than I did. And I learned that they're not like some weird animal that's different than me. They're trying to figure something out too. Try to figure out their idea, try to figure out a way to commercialize it, try to figure out a way to sell it. And what I realized is if I could help them look at their idea as if it was a painting, we could deconstruct their idea in a way that made sense to them and made more sense to someone else. And that's when I realized these business people, Dushka, would pay me to bring the talent and understanding of a painter into their business. So I then started to say, well, what kind of work is this? What career is that? And nobody had any idea. Nobody had seen it before. Who draws pictures of business? It turns out only later, years later, did I realize there were always people who were doing this. There were people who illustrated things for patents.
This is what? Tell people.
This being drawing, using your visual mind to look at a complicated scene, whether it's a scene on the street or whether it's the scene of how a business operates, and pull it apart and amplify the colors and amplify the shapes such that they become more clear to somebody else. Does that make sense? Or do you want me to hit it again, Dushka?
Yes, I think I would like to hit it because I met you by hiring you for something that I needed. And that was, I was working in a job for a startup that was trying to accomplish something extremely complicated, that is trying to accomplish something extremely complicated. And I wanted to explain it in the simplest terms possible. And I felt that part of doing that was to have someone draw it so that people could visualize it. And I thought to myself, really sincerely, I just know of one person in the world who does this. And his name is Dan Roman. He wrote this book called The Back of the Napkin. So I'm going to call him and see if he's available to help me explain what my startup does by drawing it. So you have become this like niche person that I can't think of anyone else who does quite that thing, that explains very complicated things by drawing them. And I don't want, I'm not interested in people. This is the thing that this conversation is about, is less about that and more about how people, we can take what we love and go, how can this be universally useful or universally applicable, so that I can use this thing that has me in flow in many different ways and not just in one way. So I'm going to park this and change the subject. It's going to look like I'm going to change the subject, but I'm actually not, because it's all of one piece. But I want to talk about your models. Can you, because you build airplanes, and that could be something that in your mind, because we've talked about this, is something that kids do, not something that adults do. And yet you spend a lot of time doing this. And I think it's another shining example of you making something visible and tangible, taking something kind of abstract and making it visible and tangible. So I have some questions about that, all of one piece, but can you please show people what you do with airplane models?
Sure. I'm gonna go back and share from the same set of little photos that I put together. So I'm gonna share my screen one more time. And now I'm gonna go ahead and back to this photo of me as a kid. And Dushka, you can see this one now?
Yes.
Okay, so it's also important in a little bit of my own backstory, and this is going to weave back to the model building. I grew up in a household of pilots. Both my mother and my father were pilots. And this photo here is me and my two older brothers in one of the first flights that I remember with my dad. So I love to draw, and I found out at some point that I also like to build model airplanes. And it turns out at the time when I was a kid, which is some decades ago, that for boys at that time, building plastic model airplanes was the #1 hobby in the United States for boys between the ages of something like 8 and 15 years old. And it has since kind of fallen away, but it's a thing that I loved to do. And to me, Dushka, I think here's the issue. There was no difference for me between drawing something complicated on a sheet of paper and drawing it in 3 dimensions by building it. So a model airplane, for anybody who's ever seen one, is like a really kind of an advanced set of Legos. And I see, Graham, you're talking about having done Lego serious play. Yeah, the idea of building a complicated shape in space in 3 dimensions, that's what model building is. And Dushka, because it was a childlike behavior, by the time I moved to college, I'd stopped doing it, even though I'd won awards and I love building models. But then a few years ago, years later, after I've realized that my career is explaining things not so different from building the models, I started building the models again. And I'm going to show you some of the images because I love to tell stories as well, as most all of us do. And well, often I'll paint on a two-dimensional canvas or draw on a flat piece of paper. There's also great joy, and I go into flow when I'm doing the same act, but in 3 dimensions. And then what I do is I build the models and I put them into little scenes and I take photos of them, and it becomes a glorious way to tell a story that it has existed in my mind since the time I was a child about families who fly airplanes.
And Dan, just to tell people if they, because for a reason, for just mortal time limitation, you're only showing us a couple, but if anybody wants to see the story, the Instagram handle is Read the Pilot, and the Instagram handle for your paintings is dan.rome, right?
That's exactly right. So I can even show this on screen really, really quickly. We can just go to Instagram right now for anybody who's on Instagram. And here's Read the Pilot right here. So if you want to see the aviation work, I often show the act of building the models, and you'll see it's very similar to thinking in 3 dimensions, but more to the point, I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. And then what I do with the models when they're done is I photograph them. And for anybody who's interested, it's a story of a family of people who fly airplanes throughout the history of aviation. And if you go all the way to the bottom, you can read the story in reverse. So that's what that's about.
Okay, so let me tell you why this interests me so much, aside from the fact that it's fascinating and just like it's a really good story. But what fascinates me is this. We take something that we loved as children and we put it in a box. And then we literally spend the rest of our lives wondering what we're supposed to do with our life. And the answer is in those boxes. So I loved writing and have been writing since I was a child. Like since I learned to write, I knew that that was my thing. And I put it away for years because I was too busy working. And I never connected the dots that what was missing was that thing. And so I also want to encourage people to look back at what they put away, convinced that it was a childhood thing, and notice that that is where a lot of the answers lie. So can you tell me about that? Because I know you physically put all these airplanes in a box. So I want to know why you did that, why you pulled them out of boxes, and how that connects to everything else that you do.
What a question of the day, the question of our life. For some reason, as we grow up, for some reason, society, ourselves, politics, culture, I don't know what, we say there are certain things that are okay for kids to do, but when you grow up, you need to get serious now. Now is the time when an adult needs to take over. And there's truth to that. We do need to earn money, which is the point of all of this. We raise children, we have families, we move on through our lives, we grow up. But isn't it amazing, Dushka, to your point, how often we take the very things that gave us the most joy when we were little, and whether it's thinking they're not appropriate or maybe a little bit of shame or what have you, or adults don't do that, we put them away. And it's terrible because when I look to the people in my world, in our world, who I admire the most because they're the ones who make the money doing what they most love, I look to film creators. I look to George Lucas with Star Wars, and James Cameron with the entire worlds that he's created, and J.K. Rowling with the whole Harry Potter world that she's created. And every one of these people who has been so wildly successful is simply, as an adult, telling the stories and doing the things that they loved as a kid. And they're among the wealthiest people, arguably the most financially and emotionally successful people on the planet, because they have said, what was important to me as a kid, I have found a way to make it important as an adult. And that's what we're trying to do. Dushka, does that make sense?
It does. So I want to do a little bit of a recap. And I also want to say something for the audience. I wanted to keep this conversation to like 30, 40 minutes, but I also think I want to add a Q&A. I think people in the chat would like that. And
Yeah.
I think we have some good questions. So I'm going to try to leave some time at the end for Q&A or for people to tell their own stories, because I know this is just something that we like talking about. But I also want to make sure that I deliver on the promise of just orienting people on the things that they can do to make money doing what they love. So the first sort of thing I heard was, look at what you do that you love and see how it can be more broader and more widely, like how can it apply in different ways? You figured out something incredibly creative and, mixed with luck and a lot of things, but, that applying that thinking to the things that you do and how you can sort of like unfold them into a more complete offering, I think is part of the answer. The other part of the answer is a lot in what we do as kids. And, take a look at what you did as a kid. What was that? Was it, setting up a play for your parents, or like costumes, or writing or drawing, or, things like that. I remember you and I had plans that you canceled, and you didn't want to tell me why you were doing something else. And I was like, what does he do? Like, we said that we were going to have dinner and now he can't. And he's being really suspicious about what he's doing. And I was just so perplexed with the whole thing. And then I found out that you were actually setting aside time to build a Lego spaceship.
Exactly.
And I'm like, that is fantastic. Like, cancel my plans with me anytime you want to build a Lego anything. That is amazing. And I just found it funny that it was like a little bit something that you were shy about talking about. And so if anybody here builds things with Lego, please put them in the center of your living room where they belong.
You're here.
Okay, so then do you have anything to add, Dan, about how we might rescue things we do as children, or even other things that helped you arrive at this place where you could do what you loved as a living?
Yes, and I in thinking through, Dushka, what we might be talking about, I did prepare myself by working out my whiteboard, by drawing out models. And
yes, please.
One of those that I want to talk about is, our subject is make money doing what you love. And the only way that that can work is if you know what you love.
Yes.
And that's hard. And I first wrote here, know what you love to do. And then I thought, that's crazy, because nobody knows that. You have to learn what you love to do. And here's the answer. Very often when we look at younger people, we put this incredible pressure on them, which means we're putting it on ourselves to say, what do you want to do when you grow up? Find something you love and do that. That's the worst way to ask that question, because it puts so much pressure on. I don't know what I love, but here's how you answer it. You look back to when you were a kid and you say, without any input from anybody, what were the things that I did that I remember doing that gave me joy? That's your key. Do that. You don't have to know what you love. It's already in you, reflecting back to when you were a kid. I loved building. I loved making. I loved sharing it. And I love talking about it. My entire life is just that: drawing, building, sharing, talking about it.
That's fantastically useful. And I will say, joy informs you. Joy is an emotion, but it's also a form of intelligence. People usually put like be rational or be emotional as if it was opposing things. And emotions are information. They are a form of intelligence. So looking at what is making you happy is basically saying, me, focus on me, spend more time on me. And I think that is helpful. What else, Dan?
Well, so learn what you love to do by just looking at what you love to do. And then you do have to learn how to make money. And I want to, Dushka, I just want to touch on this for a moment. I have serendipity, luck, work, all of the things, trial and error, stupid mistakes, brilliant successes, all of the things do come up with some rules. And continually, when I think, why is it that I keep being successful selling what I do? I don't think it has that much to do with ability. It has that, but it has more to do with how I simply treat other people, which means how I treat myself. And I always come back to 3 rules to be a successful consultant, or a successful entrepreneur. 3 simple rules. May I share them?
Please, I want to hear them.
They're right here on the board. Do what you say you're going to be. Do what you say you're going to do. Having lived around the world and worked with thousands of people, without exception, I would say the people with whom I want to work the most are those who simply follow through on what they said they were going to do.
Amen.
Rule number 1.
It is so underestimated how powerful it is.
Do what you say you're going to do. I don't care how talented you are. If you come through on what you said you were going to do every time, I will always hire you.
Or the corollary to that is, I don't care how talented you are. If you don't deliver on what you said that you were going to do, I will probably not hire you.
I will never hire you again. I don't care.
Even if you can paint like Cézanne.
Yeah, but if I don't want to work with unpleasant people. The second one, so do what you say you're going to do. Be easy to work with. Be easy to buy from. Be easy to sell. Be easy in your communication. Just be easy to work with. Everybody's life is so complicated. If working with you gives that person a sense of ease, they will come back. And that's true to yourself. Be easy to work with for yourself. Eliminate the barriers that get in the way. And then the third one is make your client look good. Because this is what we're actually talking about in the broadest context here, is this kind of awful word of commercial art. How do you commercialize the act of painting, or the act of model building, or the act of drawing, these artistic things? Commercialize it simply means that someone, whether it's you or your client, takes so much pleasure in it or gets so much value from it that they're willing to pay for it, which is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And the ultimate thing is make your client look good. And by the way, when I'm painting for myself, the greatest joy is when I've made myself look good. Like, how in the hell, Dad, did you do that? That's awesome. And those are the 3. Do what you say you're going to do. Yep.
I'm going to say that I have hired you, like 7 times over the past couple of years. And you live by these things. This is absolutely who you are. And the reason why I keep coming back to you is because I know that I can count on you. So I just want to say that what you're putting on the whiteboard is for real.
It's for real. And it's tricky because we all know many super creative people who are exceptionally good at what they do and have a lot of ability, but for some reason have not been able to translate it into an ability to make money. And I think a lot of it has to do with those people not knowing, not having been exposed, not having learned these 3 basics. Be reliable, be easy to work with, and make the person who's paying you look good.
Yep.
And then
what else?
And then the last one is you have to learn what matters to you, not necessarily what you love to do, but what matters in your life. What is it, your relationship that matters? And that might be your relationship with yourself. Is it the time that where do you want to spend your time? And somewhere in between those 3, learning what you love to do, learning how to make money, which I think is these 3 rules, and then learning what matters to you in your life and where you want to spend your time. If you can learn those things, you don't have to know them, but if you can learn them, and that takes a long, long time, you are going to make money doing what you love.
Okay, so now I want to spend, that's fantastic. That's incredibly helpful and very actionable. So what I want to spend literally 3 minutes on, because after this is done, I want to turn it over to Q&A. Which I would love to modulate for you, but I can't because you're the one in the control room. So well, I would love for you to tell us just 3 minutes on the Napkin Academy. And I want to tell you why I'm asking. Because everything you do is related to visual storytelling, everything, the airplanes, the paintings, the drawings, the books, all of it. And you feel very passionately about visual storytelling, and you want to help others tell better stories. So I want to know why you think this is so important. And I want you to show me what Napkin Academy offers in order for people to be able to do that. And then after that, we'll close and we'll turn it over to Q&A.
Okay, perfect. And I'm just, Dushka, rather than talk about it, I'm just going to show it to you.
Yes, please.
Many of the people who are here know what the Napkin Academy is. Many probably do not. It is now 11 years old, and I haven't done this alone. I've worked with Debbie DeLu, who is the community manager for Napkin Academy. I've worked with my good friend Xavier Fan, who helped build it many generations ago. The Napkin Academy is a series of video-based lessons, Dushka, of everything that we're talking about. And I have been making these videos for 11 years. There's now something like 350 of them. And I've packaged them into courses, which are very easy to digest. And again, be easy to work with. So if you go to napkinacademy.com, you will see that there's a series of lessons on how do you increasingly become a better visual storyteller. I've set it up as kind of a beginning, medium, and advanced level, red belt, yellow belt, black belt. You'll see that Debbie and Sherry, her partner, have a series of lessons that take applied drawing and apply it directly into business. And then we do, just like you and I are doing right now, once a month, we do a hour-long session with our subscribers that's live. We open the mic and we work back and forth and we draw. And that's what the Napkin Academy is. It's my attempt to make sure that there is a single place which is easy to access. And to be fair, it's a paid site, but all of the old videos are available for free. Everything that's more than 2 years old is available for free on the YouTube channel. If you just go to YouTube and look up Napkin Academy channel, you're going to find over 150 videos that I've made over the last 10 years that are all free to watch, all the old lessons. And it's a place where we can join the tribe together.
I'm glad that you charge for it. It's your job. It's your work. Like,
Yeah.
like as we pointed out, there's nothing wrong with making money.
Isn't that funny how we then shield ourselves? Like, oh, it costs money.
Yeah,
I don't need it. Hey, it costs money because it's good.
It costs money because you're running a business.
Exactly.
I think we need to eradicate this notion that charging money for things is like somehow dirty, because we create things and we charge for them. That is, the one thing I want to add here before I wrap is that I think what I do for a living, you know this, Dan, but I don't know how many people know this, is I tell stories. That is literally my job. I am a writer and I tell stories, and I also have broadened what that means. And I help people tell their stories. And I think it's probably one of the 3 skills that I think would up-level anyone's career. It is how to be a better writer, how to be a better presenter, and how to tell better stories. If you have those 3 skills, anything you do will be better and better paid. Yeah. And we are all constantly telling stories. I tell you about me, I tell you about other people. If I can tell the story in the right way, people become more interested, and therefore you all need to tell your story in a way that is captivating and in a way that is persuasive in order to be more successful. So the other reason why I wanted to talk about the Napkin Academy is because anything that you love to do, any way that you learn how to make money, any way that you learn how to broaden what you do, needs to be put into a story. And that is why I think resources like the Napkin Academy, and just in general, things that we can pick up on YouTube and just learn, are incredibly valuable. So yay for creators who put things on YouTube. So I know that a lot of people have questions for you. I know that a lot of people have maybe a brief story to tell. So we have, I'm going to say 10, 15 minutes to turn it over to the audience and just have a little bit of a conversation.
Yes. So I'm scanning through the questions, and we have Graham Rose has asked and put up a number of questions. So I'm going to see if I can come down here. And Graham, I don't know if you're mic'd up or not, but I'm going to ask you, I'm going to allow you to talk. Graham, can you hear us okay?
My only request would be that each person who talks be as brief as they can, so that other people get a chance to too.
And Graham, you're on.
Yeah, my question was, Dan, obviously 2 pilots as parents who gave you the freedom, who recognized your innate abilities and bought you more crayons, etc. You mentioned your daughter. Did you find that as easy just to let your daughter develop that way, or was there a conflict for you to encourage a safe career?
Oh, wow. What a great question, Graham. Graham, may I turn the question back to you for a moment?
Yeah.
Graham, none of my business, but I'm going to ask, do you have children of your own?
Yes, I have 3 daughters.
And what ages roughly?
30, 29, and 27.
Okay.
And I encourage learning. And okay, both of them have gone into medicine and one's gone into law, but it's because they found their passion.
And what kind of work do you do, Graham, if I can ask?
I'm in human resources.
Okay. So thank you for the question. And the reason I turned it back is just to set a little context. Of course, it's difficult with your children to give them that sense of freedom, because as a parent, at least in my experience, there's this incredible desire to protect. And I'll answer it, and then Graham, I'd love to hear what you think. In the case of my parents, it was a brilliant balance of them being people who embrace life with a great sense of adventure, and then passing that on to us. Now, they had 3 boys. So at the time I was growing up, the idea of letting boys be rabble rousers and run around and fly airplanes and things like that was perhaps different. But I tried to do the same with my daughters. And I think that I've been successful. And I can say this, that my older daughter, who was in the painting, we live in San Francisco, and she chose that she loves sailing. So we encouraged her to sail all she could, and now that has become her career. She's a sailing coach at a club here in San Francisco, and is quite accomplished sailing. So it's a very similar. I think, Graham, to answer your question, I think as parents we all screw things up a lot, but I also think that if you can give your child the freedom that I had as a kid, if I could do that, then they're on a good path. Does that help?
It does help. I found today's session really helpful, Dushka, because revisiting your inner child and just check what's gone into the box, be it singing or something creative, just going back to that. It was obviously there at a very early stage, and you can pick it up again. So it's given me encouragement.
You can always pick it up again. But what astounds me is how much I loved writing, and how I thought it was a good idea to stop writing so that I could focus on work, and then wondered why I felt so empty all the time. It's just mind-boggling to me. I hope nobody does makes the same mistake.
Graham, we're going to keep you on. We've also asked Mia to join, and Mia, Dushka, I know you can't see it. Mia has had a number of comments and questions today. Mia, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Sure. Mia, what's on your mind?
And actually, I'm not alone in my space. So, but I would love to share something with you afterwards. Can I send email?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, you should feel free to send an email to either Dushka or I. So I'm easy. I'm Dan at danrome.com.
Yeah, to keep it easier,
Yep.
you can email either one of us there, and Dan will forward me anything. I think that'll just streamline things.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mia, thank you so much. And we have Oscar is joining us, Oscar Gonzalez. So Oscar, let me turn on your microphone. Oscar, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Hi, Oscar. How are you?
Yes, good. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah. What's on your mind, Oscar?
Well, I was wondering about this be easy to work with. I'm always love to, again, storytelling. I'm a consultancy business in engineering. I'm a degree in physics engineering. And I'm very good with customers, but sometimes I feel in this technical environment, and I cannot expand my skills on storytelling and contact with the persons. So how to be easy work with, or how to learn more, or feel more comfortable? Thank you.
Absolutely, Oscar. Dushka, take it away.
I think you should ask people. I think different people define it in different ways. And one of the things that I have found really helpful is to not make assumptions. So I might say, was that easy for you to understand? Did you get what you needed? How can I be better next time? It's asking for feedback. People are always, I mean, not always, but usually very happy to give it. And the more you ask for it, the more it becomes this thing that you're constantly learning from. The best advice that I can give you without knowing you is ask for feedback.
Okay, thank you. And practice, and don't be shy on trying.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Oscar, if I might, do you, by virtue of you asking the question, do you feel like you're not easy to work with, or have you had feedback that you're not easy?
Not receiving feedback, but I'm I think I'm shy to try different ways to bring my skills that I love, to the technical side where I am working.
There you have it. I hear you, because this has always been, Dushka, I'm going to talk about that just for a second. We, in our professional careers, I've learned this, Oscar, and I've seen it among so many of the professionals that I work with. Something happens when we go into a professional career where we forget that we're dealing with other humans. Something happens where we must become a master of our trade, or we must have an answer to every question, or we must be able to answer yes or no, black and white, that we very often forget that we're dealing with other people. We see this a lot in things like engineering. We see this a lot in medicine, where there tends to be right or wrong answers, or so we believe. And I think, to the degree that there's any advice in here, it would be, remember all the time that we are working with other people. And even if the topic is very complicated or very black and white, we never want to make someone else look stupid. And we never want to put ourselves in the position where we're questioning someone else's ability. Those are things that I have found very helpful. And if someone sounds like an idiot because they don't know the subject as well as I do, rather than me lecturing them, I've found that it's much better to just ask them questions and get them back to where they feel comfortable.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I know that time is running short, and I want to make sure that that I don't make anyone late for anything. So the meat of the conversation has already taken place, and we're doing a little bit of Q&A for a little bit longer. But if anybody needs to sign off, please do. But I think we have time for maybe one or maybe two more questions.
So Dan Ash has a really interesting question about the conundrum. Dan, I've turned on your microphone. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, Dan, I can hear you fine, thanks.
What do you got, Dan?
Well, I work for a state agency out here in Washington, where we're helping underserved populations have a shot at success after high school. And so I saw someone else had mentioned this too, about going to college. And so one of the things that we find, this connects to your drawing, is that ESL folks struggle oftentimes with fast PowerPoint slides because they're text intensive, but using murals and strong visuals can help a non-English speaking person process information much better than trying to read text. PowerPoint presenters usually talking while they want someone to read. And just even hearing the language can be a struggle for a lot of our population. So there's a ton packed into here, but it makes me think the easiest thing we could do is ask those kids, those students, hey, remember back when you were a child, what did you love doing? Instead of what do you want to be, in college? What are you going to major in? All that pressure upon people. So I'm a big fan of the visual, the graphic, love the Grove consultancy, love back in the Napkin Academy, love video, short, easy digest. Thank you. More of a statement than a question.
Dushka, I'm going to very quickly respond to Dan, and then I'm going to leave it to you, and then we'll wrap. How's that sound?
That sounds perfect. So
Dan, on a side note, I know this about myself, and I know it because Dushka and I have talked about it. Both of us speak more than one language. In Dushka's case, several. In my case, I speak a handful of languages. And that is just by virtue of circumstance for me of having lived in other countries. And to your point about kids, English as a second language, who come to the United States or come anywhere where where anybody doesn't speak the main language, is a challenge because we rely so much on words. But to your point, every time I traveled and lived in a different place, I pulled out a piece of paper and drew. Every time, using those skills of a painter and a kid who drew, and made friends immediately and found work almost immediately because the messages were in drawing form. And pictures are a universal language. If you can't speak the words of someone in another language, you can always draw and pull out a piece of paper in a marketplace, pull out a piece of paper at a kitchen table and draw, and you can have a conversation that lasts for hours without any shared words.
What I would add to that is very different from what you just said. And that is that I've always assumed that other people have an easier time at doing things than I do, and that other people instantly understand everything when I can't. And I think we're all struggling. Like, I think there's a little bit of Oscar in all of us where we're like, am I easy to work with? Can I ask for feedback? This is really scary. And it has helped me a lot to know that those feelings are universal, and that the people that we're asking for feedback are also scared, and that the people who think understand everything quickly are struggling to understand. And that's why making things as easy to understand as possible is such an incredible skill. So as Dan points out, as Dan Ash points out, we're all human. So think, if this is hard for me, I am certain it's hard for other people, instead of thinking, I'm the only one this is hard for. Because you will understand the world better and will be able to put yourself more of service when you realize that other people are struggling too.
Beautiful. Dushka, thank you for doing this. I so love doing, I wish we had another 3 hours, but hey, that we do. For anybody who wants to join us on Napkin Academy, we talk about these things all the time. And Chava, as a true card-carrying member of Napkin Academy for years and years and years, I saw Yohava asking if we could talk to more people. Bring your ideas to Napkin Academy. Our next live session will be in July. I believe it's the 26th. Dushka, wrap this up for us. This was so fabulous.
Yeah, I do. I want to do a very, very quick summary, in part because I think it's a good idea, and in part because people are asking. So very quick, take a look at what you love to do. First, loving something, feeling enthusiastic about something is a messenger. What is that? What makes you feel like that way? Look at that. If people say, what if I don't love anything? My answer is, what is it that makes you curious? Look at that. Then take a look at it and make it broader. How can I widen it so that it applies to other things? Take a look at anything that you've put in a box, an actual physical box like Dan Rome did, or a metaphorical box, and look at what you did as a kid. And then Dan, can you point us to the whiteboard and just do a very quick recap of what you wrote at the top there, just as a summary?
Sure. Okay, so back to the whiteboard really quickly, and I'm glad I put this together. And by the way, for people who want to do consulting work, having a whiteboard behind you and preparing your conversation by thinking through things you might want to share and having them available is another really good trick. So what Dushka and I want to do is talk about making money doing what you love. You have to learn to love, you have to learn what you love to do. You have to learn how to make money, and you have to learn what matters to you. We didn't talk about this idea of the big three of being successful in business. We'll save that for another time. But also, Dushka, I'm going to end with this. And you have helped me on this one. When it comes to choosing the work that you will do for the money, learn how to say yes, but also learn how to say no. Have some sort of criteria, what you are willing to do for the money and what you are not willing to do. And recognize that free is very, very tricky. You want to give away things for free as little as you can, but when appropriate.
I want to, I keep saying that I'm going to close, and I just want to elaborate on that final point because it has been so important for me and such a difficult thing to learn. When I love something, when I love doing something, I want to give it to you for free. I want to. And if I love you, I also want to give it to you for free. So if someone says, hey, Dushka, can you just take a look at this document and edit it for me? I'm like, of course. And before I know it, I'm working for free for hours in exchange for nothing. So what I have to say to close is, money is not dirty. It is not wrong to charge for your work. It takes you work and dedication to do it. No, it is not free. With that, we leave you.
Thank you, Dushka.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. And thank you, Dan, for letting me interview you on your own show.
It was pure pleasure. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.